spent hour one mostly with Barbara Coffey, the Economic Initiatives Director for the city of Tucson. She's 6 months into her tenure here in Tucson in that position, but she is by no means new to the economic initiatives field. She has 20 plus years in that sector and brings that experience to Tucson. And so we talked about a wide range of topics. You can catch that podcast on kvuy.com/podcasts, or you can go to iTunes or Google Play Music. However and wherever you want to listen to that, we'll have the whole interview from beginning to end available for you, I'd say by tomorrow morning. Check back tomorrow morning and we'll have that ready to go. But one thing that I mentioned to Barbara is that in terms of introducing my second hour guest today, who I'll introduce in a minute, is that we can get so many things right, but if we don't have our housing policy where we want it, it's going to weaken everything else that we do. I'll go to the flip side of that, because I know we're going to hit on this topic eventually with Andrés Portela from Southwest Fair Housing Council, is that we can also get our housing policy right. But when it comes to things like evictions, part of the cure, if you will, is making sure that we have broad-based, inclusive opportunity in our cities, that we have livable wages, that we have jobs, that we have opportunity. So we could, on the flip side, get all of our housing right, but if we don't have our economic engine where it needs to be, then we still have some of the same problems. So in that sense, economic initiatives, economic development, and housing are so tied together. And I don't think that most cities, and I would even venture to say ours, understands that connection to the level that I would like to see. It's not either or. Those are not two different communities, two different voices, two different issues. Both those things have to be gotten right in tandem for our city to move into that future that I think we all see for our community. Andrés Portela, Southwest Fair Housing Council. Do you agree or disagree?
I 100% agree. I always talk about talking about underlying issues. I'm a millennial, so me and Zach frequently have this conversation about generation priced out, which is the millennial kind of thing. And when we start to think about these underlying issues of not just economic development, we have to look at what is poverty in its truest form. We have to look at those underlying things, which are wages. Could someone be dropped into this community and thrive or succeed or move forward? Before we even jump into that, I just want to let all Pima County voters know today is the last day.
Yeah, thank you.
To go ahead and register to get your eligibility for November. So please do that. Whoever you're voting for, please just make sure you're registered to vote so you can vote.
And if you are voting for the August primary, you need, that's even more reason to do it today.
Yeah.
So.
It's, I think it's August
27th.
Yeah, it's the cutoff day. And then again in November, we're going to vote for our new mayor. And so it's extremely important. Please go out, register to vote and then vote. Jumping back into this, talking about the intersectionality of housing and economic development. Housing can sometimes be left out of the conversation, but in order to encourage positive growth, we have to include it into the conversation, as Zach was saying, and as was stated in the last segment. Housing is at the forefront. I focus on fair housing, and Southwest Fair Housing Council has come up with these maps, and I may be jumping into these a little bit prematurely, but these maps really are informing development and where people are at. What we looked at was census data from 10 years ago, and we're about to do it again.
Thank God. I cannot wait to see the new census data.
Yeah.
10 years feels a long ways ago for Tucson.
Yeah, Tucson is completely transformed in the last 10 years. If we just look at development in general, but if we start to look at the people of Tucson, it has completely changed. And so we took that 10-year information, matched it with a lot of the work that we do as far as gathering data during our conversations with housing providers, landlords, tenants, anyone. We gathered a lot of data and we came up with these things called opportunity indexes. Opportunity indexes, and if you want to see these maps, they are on southwestfairhousingcouncil.com. What they do is they look at attainment. So if you were dropped into a community of your choice, And choice is the key factor in all of this. If you were dropped into a community of your choice, would you be able to thrive? And so what we looked at was proximity as far as transportation. We looked at educational attainment. We looked at all of those variables that would show if someone was dropped into a specific community of their choice, would they thrive? We did that amongst different protected classes under the Fair Housing Act. So those protected classes are as followed. I want to make sure that I'm getting all of them because I always forget one or two of them. So it's race, color, sex, religion, national origin, familial status, and disability. But what that really does is it allows us to see where people are residing, meaning like where particular types of people are residing on the basis of race and color, and then what is their mobility in society. And so that's what we were trying to get at when we came out with these opportunity indexes.
That's awesome. I can't wait to get into that because oddly enough, over the weekend, someone introduced me to the work of Raj Chetty, who talks about basically what are some of the correlated things that connect to create broad-based opportunity and success in a community. So I've been in those waters all weekend, and then that's what we're gonna talk about today. And Andres this is the first of the official piece of this. I asked Andres to be a monthly housing contributor, a guest contributor to the Creative City show. So this is our first, not your first time on the show, but our first official, regularly scheduled segment each month on housing issues in Tucson. Let's talk about what the Southwest Fair Housing Council is seeing in these communities. Not just Tucson, but you are the Southwest Fair Housing Council. Can we get into what are some of the things that you are seeing as creating opportunity?
So creating opportunity as far as so.
What are some of those metrics that you're seeing? What are some of those? You mentioned the research that's being done. What do you think it's telling you from a policy perspective?
From a policy perspective, what it's telling us is that we need more investment in particular communities. We frequently what we do is we introduce these at important conversations because our ultimate objective is to inform development. We don't want to be the key deciding factor. But we do want to make sure that we're presenting, because our main focus is fair housing. And so we want to make sure that everyone has equal access and opportunity. And so when you look at these maps, we are just basically looking at the ideal community. If all of us look at our ideal community and where we want to purchase a home, first thing we're going to think about is affordability. And if we have children, the second thing we're going to think about is where they can go to school. The third thing we might think about is transportation if we don't drive a vehicle. The next thing we might start thinking about is where's the closest grocery store? And if we have a transportation issue, then we may have to have those conversations in tandem. And so our primary focus is to inform development. As far as what is coming out of that, we have had a few local municipalities, Tucson being one of them, really take interest in our opportunity indexes, and it's really informing kind of the movement that they've been going on.
Are you at liberty to kind of give an example? Is that a later conversation?
Yeah, that's a later conversation.
Super.
But
well, like I said, we're going to do this every month. So figuring out what we're going to talk about 10, 12, 18 months down the road is just fine.
Yeah,
we'll
that's
book it.
perfect.
We'll book it for 2021. It's all good.
Yeah. So, and really, when we came up with these maps, it was purely to make sure everyone had equal access and opportunity. We purely focus on the 7 protected classes, but we branch out a little bit. So a few years ago, HUD came out with this regulation called the Disparate Impact Regulations. And that basically said is that laws apply to everyone, but some people disproportionately are affected by those laws. And where we're seeing them play out is in likelihood of imprisonment. And we've talked about this on this show a few times before. But we're really using that to work with Pima County and the city of Tucson to make sure that people who are coming out of the system aren't recidiv. We're trying to reduce recidivism, and so the way we're doing that is a multi-agency approach to that. The city of Tucson has stepped in, TPD has stepped in, Southwest Fair Housing Council is at the table, Old Pueblo Community Services are all at the table, and our main focus is making sure that people who were incarcerated don't end up back incarcerated. And we're doing that a few different ways through like financial literacy. Also, if they have a arrest, a charge, or offense, and they're becoming repeat offenders, and they need help beyond financial help, like behavioral health or something of that sort, we are providing those channels of support. And so that's how it's been playing out with those opportunity indexes, because the city of Tucson has really stepped up and assisted them with housing, with letting them know where the best housing is, with the housing authority. And they're really trying to help their housing choice to reduce recidivism.
Right. So important. I was seeing data this weekend that when you look at an African American male that is born in the lower 25th percent, so lower, you can, and the coffee's still kicking in. You can help me with what I'm trying to say.
Are you talking about like extreme to low poverty? So it's under 30%.
Right. So 25th percentile. When you look at an African American male today in America that is born into a family that is on the top 25% income earners, that's what I'm looking for.
Okay.
So when you look at African American males born into kind of lower economic opportunity and higher economic opportunity, the chance that those two individuals can get into the top income earners in our community is about the same. Now, if you're talking about an African American woman, it's what you would expect it to be. But when we talk about African American males, it really doesn't matter whether they're born into wealth or they're born into poverty. It's almost the same outcome related to the issues that you're talking about, Andres. Now, again, it's different if you're talking about an African American woman. But we have a massive problem in this country, and I wish it wouldn't be politicized. Because again, I think it's just looking at the numbers. We have a problem.
True.
We have an absolute problem. And I guess I took that long, winding road to affirm the work that you're up to.
Yeah.
And working on that recidivism.
It was really great. I had the opportunity to visit the Greater New Orleans Fair Housing Justice Center in New Orleans this last week. And they are working on a project, and they've been working on this project for years. They were once amongst the nation's lowest civil rights educated community. And really, this is what we're talking about. If people don't understand that the lowest rung and the highest rung have the same outcome, how do we encourage growth amongst the whole community? And so they have started this educational program, which I'm working to implement it here in Arizona. We are trying to make it so that we can do civil rights education in the schools, in which we talk about housing choice and how housing choice affects every other aspect of life. And so housing choice can really change the trajectory of a lot of kids. And so if they understand what discrimination is, just on the basis of levels, they can talk about housing choice and how housing choice will affect outcomes.
And by housing choice, just to clarify for anyone who either jumped in or maybe this is their first time listening to you talk about the work and research of the Southwest Fair Housing Council, Andres, how would you define neighborhood and home choice? Again, just kind of in simple terms.
Yeah, neighborhood and home choice. I always say home choice is like, where would you want to live? I always, when I do my classes, and I give a monthly class at Pima Housing Center, and it's every Thursday, the first Thursday of the month, the second Thursday of every month. I give a class at Pima Housing Center. The first thing I do is ask people to write down all of their homes. And that's just a simple basic thing. Where have you lived? And people can write down lists. And then I have them interact with other people in the class. And the first thing I always get a revelation from a few people when people say, I lived in my car for 1 or 2 years. And it really solidifies the point of housing choice is extremely important to where someone wants to be. When someone is placed into the community that they want to be in, whether it's affordability is a factor, whether it's all of these different things as a factor, it can really affect where they are going to go, but also where their children are going to go, where their families are going to reside. And so housing choice is simply being put in the neighborhood or home of your choice, or your desire, and then it fitting your needs.
So the interesting element of this before we go to a break is I don't think it's by accident. I mean, it kind of was, but we made it less by accident that we're talking about housing issues right after talking to the economic initiatives director of the city of Tucson. So there's a researcher. They say about Raj Chetty that it's not whether he'll get a Nobel, but when he'll get a Nobel, because he's doing a data-oriented approach to American opportunity. And when the question is asked, when you look at the opportunity of a person born into the lowest 25% of income earners to reach the top 25%, right? The American dream. When you look at, the opportunity of a person to live the American story, he was clear to say there's not a causation that he can tell yet, but there is a correlation between whether that person grew up in a mixed income community or whether they grew up in a community that was segregated by income. Right, that there was kind of income segregation, and I know segregation is a heavy word. Maybe it's not the right word to use, but in the sense of you often find communities where that if you make $100,000 plus, you're all living in this part of town. If you're making $30,000 or less a year, you're living in this part of town. He found that where there was mixed income communities, that the American dream, the American opportunity, was much faster realized. Again, not causation necessarily, but a distinct correlation. To me, that connects, from what I understand, to be neighborhood choice and home choice. We have to work on that to provide that context.
Yeah, definitely. The city of Tucson has a checkered past when it comes to this. Let's take my community of choice. I live in San Clemente, which is nestled right next to Reed Park. 40 years ago, I would not, as an African-American male, I would not have been allowed to purchase a home in that neighborhood. It was strictly, they had a housing ordinance that specifically said, if you weren't white, you could not live in this community. And so if we look at what communities belong to black communities in Tucson, let's take a look at South Park. South Park is where U of A Tech Park is currently residing, right there off of I-10 and Park. But yeah, if we look at the community surrounding South Park, there's been very little investment in the communities, but U of A Tech Park is right in the middle. And so when we start to look at the schools that are in those communities, a lot of the schools have moved out and are closed. But when we look at communities the people with higher incomes are in those communities, their community schools are alive and thriving, and they have no intentionality on closing anytime soon. And so just to keep that, segregation is sometimes politicized, but it's not a politicized thing. It's the history of the United States, and we should just acknowledge it as that and something we can build off of.
Yeah, I think it's got to be future forward looking. And what I'm continually trying to look at is, there are even in the groups that you and I get to work with in some cases, there are people who will look at this from a social justice standpoint, and that's not a bad thing. But there's also, I must say, a case to be made, even though there's not a case to be made. Not that there has to be a case that has to be made. These issues are not just social. These issues are not just justice. They're not just economic. That the opportunity for people to be able to live and to thrive where they want to live is a critical piece of the American dream. And not just the individual American dream, the overall American project, I would say. And so to me, I think whether you are a chamber of commerce or a fair housing group or a neighbor or a developer, I feel like there's a reason for all of us to be invested in these issues of connecting housing to economic development and opportunity.
True.
I'm just brainstorming with you on the air at this point.
Yeah, definitely. So. There's always a story to be told about the intersectionality of like development. My primary focus is housing, and I chose that because it's very selfish. Everyone has their choice in where they want to live, and it's one of the few occasions in life where everyone gets to be selfish. But there are always mitigating factors in your selfishness. whether it's income, whether it's attainment in other different ways. But housing choice is one of those few times we get to be selfish. And so everyone should have a fair opportunity to housing choice.
I think that takes us away to our first break in a good way. When we come back, we'll continue this conversation in segment 2, part 2 of my interview with Andrés Portela of the Southwest Fair Housing Council, talking about housing and neighborhood choice. We'll be right back here on 1030 The Voice. Don't go away. Tucson, welcome back to part 2 of our interview here with Andrés Portela of the Southwest Fair Housing Council. You are listening to the Creative City Show here on 1030 The Voice. And thank you for being here. 790-2040 is your opportunity to join in on the conversation. And on accident, I booked Andres. We agreed on a time, I think late June even. I mean, we pushed this out based on travel schedules and whatever, about a month. So you've been in the books for a while. Yep. And then I had the opportunity to connect with Barbara Coffey to come on the air, and today was her best day. And so it just turned out that we have a back-to-back discussion connecting economic development and city prosperity to housing issues. I love how that works out on this show. I wish it was on purpose, but it's always by accident. But that's okay, because this was meant to happen. So that's what we're talking about with Andrés Portela here on the air from the Southwest Fair Housing Council. We talked about a little bit, Andrés, evictions. Tucson ranks pretty high on evictions. I've been interested, and this will lead into hopefully what I'd love to hear more about from you is there's been some research that shows kind of a negative correlation between median wages and evictions in the sense that affordability maybe even a little bit less of an issue than broad-based city prosperity and opportunity. In other words, the opportunity for people to have the financial and career prosperity they need may have even just slightly a little bit more to do with lowering the eviction crisis in our state than getting affordable housing right. Interesting research. But you are working as a part of Southwest Fair Housing Council with the Southern Arizona Prosperity Alliance. Tell me about that a little bit.
Yeah, so the way that Southwest Fair Housing Council looks at its work, it's the jurisdiction of the Fair Housing Act, which is rental/leasing, sales, mortgage lending, appraising, zoning, design, and construction, and then advertising. We felt like we needed to be a little bit more in the advocacy space. And so we, out of the Poverty Commission a few years ago that kind of died from the city, we formed the Southern Arizona Prosperity Alliance. The Southern Arizona Prosperity Alliance is a collective of nonprofits here in the city of Tucson who have championed not championed, but assisted with a few different causes. They were kind of a pushing force behind the education Pima County vote. So
okay.
They were trying to push
the PCPIP.
PCPIP.
Pima County. Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, I know. It's one of those mornings where I just can't remember.
Yeah. Preschool investment program.
Yeah, that's it.
We're gonna go with that.
We'll go with that one. So we had a strong voice in that fight, and now we're focusing on predatory lending and and livable wage. So next year you're gonna have the ability to vote on ending predatory lending. Basically meaning at this moment you could go to a title lending place and they would hit you with $1 million fees to get your title at the end of this conversation. But mainly what we're trying to do is stop predatory lending, period. Yep. It's not beneficial for anyone. It usually catches the people who are in extreme to low poverty. And so we're just trying to catch that. But we're doing it with the assistance of the Community Food Bank, SALA, Southern Arizona Legal Aid. We have so many different players at the table who are just invested in community growth. And so when we start talking about wages, wages are kind of the basis of most conversations. So we can talk all day about affordability and all of these things where people can move, or there can be a lot of mobility in society. But when we start talking about wages, it's ultimately what oppresses a lot of people. They're caught in a low wage job. They're unable to move up that social rung. And so our thing is, what is Arizona's livable wage at this moment? Let's talk about Tucson. What is Tucson's livable wage?
I would say Tucson's livable wage probably should be, I mean, on the absolute lowest side, 20 an hour. 25, I would say, is median, and I think 30 would be optimal.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Zach, goodness gracious.
Was that right?
No. So they say...
So the average occupational wage in Tucson right now is a little over $20 an hour,
yeah,
which is itself percentage points dramatically below the rest of the country.
Mhm.
So that was what I was thinking.
Yeah,
But
you're right. You're right. So we're saying that livable wage is around $20 an hour.
Yeah.
We've marked it at 1880,
Okay.
but that was based off of a generator that MIT came up with. And MIT also said if you're a single person making $10 an hour, you could live. We know that is not possible. Let's talk about let's talk about downtown Tucson at this moment. I always look on Trulia or all of these different places to see what rent is like. I could not afford on $10 an hour. I could not afford to live in downtown Tucson. Most people can't afford to live in their cities downtown. But when we start talking about neighborhood choice, we really want to say wages should not be a factor in someone wanting to live in the neighborhood where they have the most ability to thrive. And so SAPA, Southern Arizona Prosperity Alliance, is really focusing on livable wage and stopping predatory lending. That's our main focuses for the next 2 years.
So what I found when I talk about the ideal scenario, and this is the way that it used to be, but the ideal scenario from so many levels, from a city infrastructure sense, from a public safety sense, from state shared revenue sense. I mean, I could probably list 5 to 10 things. Is you really want people to be able to live near where they work.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just so many reasons why that is the most ideal. I'd say for 50, 60 years, we've kind of been living by you have to drive to qualify, is what I heard from somebody the other day. And so many would say, well, Andres, of course, downtown is, every downtown is the way that you just said.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any idea in terms of if a person's choice neighborhood is Midtown or is kind of in the exurbs maybe that's closer to Sunset, Camino de la Tierra, whatever the case may be? Are we seeing some of the same issues? How far do you have to go to qualify for the house in the neighborhood that you want? Do you have any idea of that? I'm trying to devil's advocate the position a little bit because these are the things that I've heard is, well, yeah, downtown is supposed to be expensive.
Yeah, and that's, I mean,
which I don't agree with, but
yeah, but we've talked about that before. We've talked about understanding the dominant narratives. So when we start to think about the dominant narrative is downtown supposed to be expensive. But let's talk about the peripheries of downtown. Are the peripheries of downtown any more affordable? So if we talk about downtown, if we think about any neighboring community, let's talk about Armory Park, which was primarily I would say a retirement area, because the adult senior center, elderly senior center is right there.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of the people who lived in that community for years were retired. And when we see this mass exit of people, it was all centered around the lack of ability to live off of their retirement, but also get a job where they can make wages enough to live in place. And so we saw we're seeing a massive movement of people out of that neighborhood. So even if we're thinking about, yes, downtown should be more affordable, let's talk about transportation, because people, if they don't have cars, they need to get downtown. So when we talk about transportation itself, and Zach brought this up during the last hour, our transit system, or what is it, the
streetcar?
The streetcar only goes about
4 miles.
4 miles, and that was $100 and some odd million of 4 miles that takes you from the University of Arizona to University of Arizona downtown. Who else does it really service other than students? There's a few people outside of the student realm, but it really doesn't service very many other people. And so if we are going to make downtown uber expensive, we have to have alternatives and other services for people to get downtown. The bus hub is downtown, but Costs go up every year to ride the bus. So when we start thinking about downtown and placement or housing choice, we have to look at these other things that would affect housing choice.
So this was, if you're down to finish off with this conversation, it wasn't on our agenda, but I'm
It
curious
wasn't.
to get your thought. Well, what I'm going to ask is about the livable wage
Mm-hmm.
and how we get there, right? How does that connect to prosperity and housing choice? And this is my Taco Bell story. I just won't even pretend. I was in Taco Bell the other day.
Yeah,
Judge me if you must.
it's my guilty
I
pleasure.
was in.
I get
It's
you.
okay. Guilty pleasure.
Yeah,
Emphasis on guilty.
yeah.
Just kidding. Of all the great taco places to go to in
I know.
Tucson, it's a guilty pleasure. Anyway, so I was in Taco Bell, and I went up to the front, as I always do, to order. And I looked behind me, and I saw these two screens installed. This is the Taco Bell on Speedway and Silver Bell.
Okay.
And so I went in there and I saw these two screens. And I asked the cashier, I said, are those screens for, for takeaway or for Uber or for,
No, that's for you to
Grubhub or whatever?
order, Zach.
And she said, no, those are for us to order, for you to order. And I was like, so what's the difference? Why would I go to that over coming to you? And she was like, there's no difference. And I was like, automation coming
Yep.
to a Taco Bell near you.
Taco Bell, McDonald's, all of them.
All of them.
Yeah.
Not all of them have it, but I've gone into McDonald's and you don't have to talk to a human being to
Mhm.
get your food anymore. And so this is just one of the concerns that I have when it comes to how do we increase a livable wage. I'm afraid if there are impulses to raise it too quickly, too fast, places like Taco Bell will just go, we don't have to pay anybody anything an
Yeah,
hour.
we
We can
can-
just send people to screens. And so Andrew Yang, Democratic candidate for president, has this view of connecting automation to livable wage. So when you're in the Southern Arizona Prosperity Alliance, what's some of the conversation around wage and prosperity? Or we don't even have to attach a brand or a group to it.
Yeah.
What do you think is the way we get there in the best way possible?
When we start thinking about livable wage, I always say the best way to get there is to prop up those who are at the minimum wage. So when we think about minimum wage right now, it's $10, but that is a wage at a minimum. That does not mean that your employer has to pay you that wage. That means that the government has stepped in and said, this is the basic minimal wage that someone can pay you for goods and services. I mean, for your work and their goods and services. And so understanding that, I always encourage small businesses to invest a little bit more in their employees. When we have more people receiving better wages, it's always been proven that they spend more money. And it was kind of a situation like this in the city of Flagstaff. This is an example of a failure, but there's opportunity for Tucson. So the city of Flagstaff said that they were going to go to $20 minimum wage, and it passed. It went through. But as it went through, and they put in some safety nets that brought them back down. But when they took everyone to minimum wage, the cost of housing jumped immediately. The cost to get your coffee and your bagels in the morning jumped immediately. The cost of gas jumped immediately. And so you had a whole type of people being priced out. And so what the city had to do is they worked with small business and they said, how do we make this work? So that's why we always see gradual based income growth all the time. So the city of Flagstaff and business development have decided $15 an hour in the next 2 years is what they're aiming for, but it's got to be gradual. And so the city of Tucson has a unique opportunity, and the city of Tucson is committed to getting a livable wage. I think if they've said that or expressed that sentiment at some point in time, that they are trying to get to a livable wage. The next step after the city of Tucson is local nonprofits. I always say it, Tucson is a nonprofit city, so our next step is to get these local nonprofits to start to inch forward. Once we get nonprofits, then we attack small business. But we really have to set the stage for everyone to feel comfortable doing it.
Yeah, it's just so interesting with Tucson is I just sometimes don't think that small business has the current bandwidth to be able to invest in the employees the way that they would want to. I mean, I know that I was a part of a small business for a while that did as much as we could, but we were incredibly limited, and workforce is such a huge piece, of the P&L statement. And I think you're right. I think you can go too far too fast and not understand, the economic disadvantages, But I would also, I want to throw this at you maybe as we're going to close down and get your thoughts of, I think when we talk about those livable wage issues, I think the other thing we have to consider is, do we have workforce development in place that can help people move up the ladder rather than just expecting that where they're at is going to sustain them for the long haul? So are there the jobs to move up into? Is there the education available to move up into those things? Do you live in the neighborhood and home that you want to live in? Do you have the opportunity that you need? And those are all issues I think we need to be talking around this. Does that play into either your personal philosophy or what you're hearing out there in terms of wage issues?
Yeah, so I always feel, and this conversation has been independent of Southwest Fair Housing Council.
Thank you for clarifying. I know we're taking kind of a winding path around. But.
We talked a lot about what Southwest Fair Housing Council does. Me and Zach are going to talk about the housing contributor part of this. So when I always feel that the city of Tucson and Pima County in general is doing a great job as far as education. I always see at the Pima Housing Center they do training on they basically do training when it comes to tax season. They do budgeting and all of those type of education. That all takes place at the Pima Housing Center. You just got to know what it is. They have a Facebook. I don't think they have an Instagram, but I know they have a Facebook for sure. I know Pima College does a great job of having all of these programs available. The problem that we're having at the moment is every housing person that I speak to says that we don't have enough workforce to fulfill these jobs. So when we start talking about housing affordability, they always say, well, we don't have enough workers, so we have to bring up our costs. I heard that at the Pima Housing Commission's meeting. They basically said, well, if we train more people, then we can bring down our costs. And I think that is...
This is like construction development.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I always feel like to a certain extent that could be true. But that takes an approach that a lot of housing experts say, if we flood the market with a lot of housing, then of course, by all means, the cost of housing is going to go down. And that's not necessarily true. If we're not, wages is still at 2%, and that's nationally. So if we're not considering that wage conversation, and we're not talking about those underlying issues, which would address poverty, because Tucson has a poverty issue. I think the study was 1 in 4 children go to bed hungry. If
1 in 4 millennials 25 to 34 are in poverty. I mean,
if we're not addressing those issues, then we're not never going to be able to have those conversations around city development or economic growth. I know when I was choosing, after graduating from the University of Arizona, which city I wanted to settle in, that study that came out that said Tucson is one of the most ideal places for millennials to live. I saw that and said, okay, cool, I'll reside here. But as I started to do more research, I realized wages still haven't gone up. We have a housing market that is, I don't want to say inflated at the moment, but we have a housing market that is, I think last time I was here, you had someone who was talking about growth in just downtown, and he talked about how there's no condos downtown at all. So we have a transient community, so it makes it super easy to inflate costs. And he said something that really stood out to me last time. He said there are 36 units downtown under 200,000 or something of that sort. And it really stuck with me because if we want to have a thriving downtown and a thriving city of Tucson, we have to consider a lot more than just downtown. We have to talk about, they're starting West Side development right now, but we really have to talk about investment on the peripheries. I always bring up Grant and Alvernon as my Grant and Alvernon as my vision of where development should take place. The communities that surround that would be under the basis of national origin, people with disabilities. I always see a lot of people of color when we talk about those opportunity maps. That is where people of color reside. That is where people with disabilities reside. People of different national origins reside. And so when we look at that corner and how so many big boxes have left that area, Circle K, Walmart, Fry's, all of those different things have left. When we think about housing choice, how is that an ideal community? How does someone thrive in that community? How does someone grow in that community? And last time I said that, and it opened the floodgates for phone calls. But it's just where we're trying to what housing in general is trying to talk about, and what we're trying to talk about is, if you were placed in your community of choice, where would you see yourself grow?
Yeah, Andres. Before we go, let's get to some of our callers.
Goodness.
And
Okay.
well, you're the expert in the room.
Oh goodness.
So.
Let's do this.
Let's go. We have Roberta on our live line. Roberta, thanks for calling in. Do you have a question or comment for Andres?
Yes, I do. What is the Pima Housing Center, and what do they do?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the Pima Housing Center is Pima County's solution to people understanding what housing opportunities are available to them. So Pima County has a ton of programs if you're a first-time buyer, or if you need assistance doing repairs with your home, because a lot of the population has aging homes. And so they have some incentives through community block development grants, which is another way of the federal government just giving funds to cities to encourage growth or rehabilitation of older communities. But the Pima County Housing Center serves that purpose of resource dispersion in our community. They have access to a lot of resources for home buyers, whether you're first time or long time home buyer, or reoccurring home buyer, or if you just need assistance, period, in your housing choice. Pima County Housing Center is instrumental in that. That was a great question.
Yeah, that's good. And let's see, I'm trying to find, I found Pima County's site to be really hard to navigate.
Yes, it is.
But maybe if we can find a website together shortly down the road.
Yeah.
I'm not pulling it up fast enough. But I mean, on that note, Andres, you're here primarily to talk about, you're going to be one of our monthly contributors on housing issues. You're here wearing primarily the Southwest Fair Housing Council hat. Anything that we've talked about in closing that we can point any of our listeners to, your website or any of the research that you've done, what would be a next step for tracking what you're up to?
Yeah, so to find out what Southwest Fair Housing Council is doing, we frequently put out press releases that go to media, and you can go on our website and become a part of our listserv for us to send you our newsletter. I think the most effective thing for you to do is join us on Facebook. That is primary where we put all our information in English and in Spanish. We try to catch a whole swath of people. But if you're a renter and you're having issues in the city of Tucson, there are organizations that are advocating for you. So just understanding that Step Up to Justice, you can go to stepuptojustice.com or go to their newly formulated website called Hello Tenant, which tells you your tenant rights according to Arizona Landlord Tenant Act. And they're trying to use that as a way to reduce the eviction crisis of 13,000 people being evicted in the last year. So really, if you need those resources, they also give monthly classes on ways to interact with your landlord. So that's the landlord tenant aspect. Pima County Housing Center, if you're a home buyer or anyone in a housing choice or housing setting, please reach out to Pima Housing Center. They have a great resources available for you. Other resources. I don't think I have any other resources. I think Hello Tenant is a great one for renters, or Step Up to Justice if you need assistance immediately. They are available to you, the Pima Housing Center, but also Southwest Fair Housing Council. You can go to our website, southwestfairhousingcouncil.com. Find us on Facebook, Twitter. We have an Instagram, and we'll just show you all of the work that we're doing. Whether you're a landlord and you're trying to seek education surrounding fair housing or Arizona Landlord Tenant Act, we have those monthly classes every every second Thursday of the month at the Pima Housing Center, which is downtown right next to the Mercado. We also provide classes in which we come to you as housing providers, but also for consumers. If you are in the housing market at all and you want to know what your rights are when it comes to fair lending, or if you have or any of the 7 protected classes I've mentioned in the past, and you just need assistance in any way, you can give us a call, head to our website, or find us on Facebook. We're available to you.
Awesome. Andres, thank you so much for your time. You gave us about 10 to 15 minutes more than we asked for, so I appreciate that. Yes.
I appreciate you.
Yeah,
exactly.
no, I appreciate you and your time. Thank you guys for what you're up to, and we'll see you next month.
Yeah, definitely. Next month.
Andres, Southwest Fair Housing Council. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah.
Tucson, we'll be right back. Go find Andres and his work where he just told you to go and check it out. You're on 1030 The Voice, trusted local news and talk. We'll be right back to wrap up the hour and hand off to the Bill Buckmaster Show. So much live and local news and talk coming your way. We'll be right back. Tucson, welcome back to the program. We're about 5 minutes out from the Bill Buckmaster Show. We've had a fast-paced 2 hours here on the program. We'll get into that in a second. I want to take this moment and appreciate one of our wonderful sponsors that makes this show work. Without them, we wouldn't have a show. So we love our sponsors and appreciate them. I want to highlight today Shanae and her team over at HR Resolve, a professional employer organization that helps small to mid-size businesses meet their payroll and HR needs. She works with small business employees to have or she helps businesses help their employees to feel that their place of work is a great place to work and receive the benefits that large companies might have, but in a way that small businesses and mid-sized businesses can afford and can give to their employees. Shanae, I've known Shanae for years. She is a small and mid-sized business owner, an entrepreneur extraordinaire, and is a real homegrown business person here in Tucson that is just continuing to grow her portfolio, what she does, and to help small and mid-sized businesses succeed and to help their employees feel taken care of. So if you are a small to mid-sized business and you want a small to mid-sized business owner helping you help your employees feel taken care of on the HR and payroll side, definitely get a hold of Shanae, and I will give you that number in a minute. I thought I had it pulled up, and I did not. I'll get that for you in a second. Bill Buckmaster is coming up today real quick. Political Face-Off coming at you the first half of the hour, and then we're going to get to hear news out of Reed Park Zoo. They just had kind of an influx of capital to invest with, and they will be on the Bill Buckmaster Show. Well, that just about does it for the program today, but a couple things I wanted to wrap up with. I was hinting at a couple of things today, but this recent research came out of the Wall Street Journal over the weekend. Between 2000 and 2017, median household incomes inched up over that 17-year period by 2%. Median home prices, meanwhile, shot up by 21% during that same time. Home ownership rates for young people are near their lowest levels in more than 3 decades of record keeping. A listener and supporter of the show pulled out this quote from that article, that lower home ownership for young adults means lower economic growth. And that's it in a nutshell. So when we're talking about can our communities thrive, can we reach our potential economically, we cannot overlook our housing and housing accessibility issues, whether that's supply, diversity, pricing, people's incomes. It all connects and it all relates. But if you are selling a home to a young person and you're listening, that's an important fact to note. The cost of owning a home has gone up dramatically faster than the incomes that those, we'll say 25 to 35 their disposable income that they have to spend on housing. So important stuff there. Tucson, thank you so much for listening. We'll be back tomorrow. Tomorrow I get to have Chris DeSimone of Wake Up Tucson on as my guest, and we'll get to talk about why millennials may not be staying in Tucson. It's going to be a fun hour. 2 radio hosts going at it. That'll be us on the Creative Cities show tomorrow at 10. Stick around for Buckmaster, and we'll see you tomorrow, Tuesday.